See, the government, they don't want thinkers, they want workers. Also, is the omnibus going to hurt Nesara in any way?
Well, the omnibus spending, any promised spending that we firmly believe that is actually executed, it's you can't have fits and starts of spending to control anything. And that's basically what they did. They loaded up with more debt and spending and all of the money they were handing out 2 summers ago. And then last year they didn't. So that's what kind of plunged us into the beginning of a recession. Because they wanted to switch to this modern monetary theory, which is only a theory. It can only work if you can continue every year printing more and more money, taking out more and more debt. And that's the only way it works. And they didn't continue to do that. And you'll notice that you haven't heard any words of that out of the central bank or the Federal Reserve since they first started talking about it. So I think their direction is plain to be seen. There's only one direction that they can move, is to try to inflate away the debt. But by doing that, they're exponentially increasing the cost of that debt. And then when you have the Congress come in with a $1.7 trillion spending package that we don't have the money for, that has to be created with more debt at now higher interest rates, it's a perpetual problem. So my feeling about the spending is it's atrocious, especially the fact that it's been led by many people who are serving in our Congress who aren't respecting the value of the people, their money, and their work. And most of these people won't even be there after January 1. So it's, at its core, it's against the ideas behind Nesara. But will it actually affect it? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Now, what are your thoughts on Nesara? Because Nesara is basically the same thing as Nesara, but Nesara is on
Global.
Nesara is global. Yeah, it's global. So, what are your thoughts on Nesara, and how do you think Nesara impacts communism, socialism, and that stuff?
I don't know that communism and socialism can exist alongside of that. And when we think of socialism and fascism, you have to think of companies working in tandem with government and controlling people. And I think we're getting a very good idea about things like that as we look at the Twitter files that are coming out. That kind of control of people's free speech and other freedoms and God-given rights can't really be imposed upon and have the effects of Nesara or Nesara around the world that you would like. Now, the necessity for Nesara is just as dire, if not more, than Nesara here in the United States. Financial people can argue back and forth whether they think the United States is bankrupt or not. But many of these other countries, they passed their last legs. And we know that they're having trouble. We know that China's having trouble. We know that they're all having trouble when they stop making payments to foreign investors. That means the situation within their country is so dire that they can't think outside of it. You'll recall in Singapore, we had no outside payments being made. And And people were starving and they had no food and they had no heat and they had no gas. They had nothing. When you look at mainland China, the whole the whole Evergrande thing. I mean, we know that BlackRock and Fidelity and other bondholders were not paid any interest or any adjustment for their defaults at this point. And we know Russia's not going to pay people outside Russia, and that's probably a byproduct of the sanctions we put on them, which have come back tenfold at everybody who's tried to stop them from participating in world markets. So it's extremely important. It's extremely important to the 8+ billion people here on Earth. I'm not talking about the people, the billionaires and the multimillionaires and the people who have everything they need. I am talking about the everyday citizens around the world. They need it to survive as we go into a recession. That's my firm belief.
How do you think Nesara is going to benefit the everyday American? You know, people making under $50,000 per year.
I think any alleviation of the stress and debt that they have on them would make their lives a little bit easier to achieve the basic needs of every human being that every human being deserves. You know, if you don't have a $7,000 credit card bill over your head, maybe buying food as it goes up in price is going to be a little easier for you. Maybe it lowers people's heart rate. I mean, it may help people's health for all we know. Having the little bit more of their personal freedom and integrity back can go a very long way. And it can go a long way in helping people around you, such as your neighbors.
Now, everybody and their sister, they talk about Nesara and they talk about the universal basic income that comes along with Nesara. If we get a UBI with Nesara, in your opinion, how much do you think people are going to get from that UBI? And do you think the UBI is a good thing, a bad thing? What are your thoughts?
Well, traditionally, my mindset is not to subscribe to anything that would be a UBI style thing. Just because it takes away motivation of people to work. And we saw that happen before when, you know, PPP money was being sent out to people. In the past, people have used this money primarily in the markets, which we saw in 2021. That's not the best use of funds. And a UBI dollar amount, you know, this Nesara thing is a lot of shaking out of different currencies, different valuations, different things that have gone on in history, different debts that won't be there. And the cost that we currently know may not even be applicable depending on what actually occurs with inflation. So to say that you're going to need $10,000 because it costs $5,000 a month to live this year is not really practical, especially if we're talking about a reduction in debt. It's not necessary. I'm sure that years and years of work and calculations have gone into this. And if there is a UBI, I'm sure it will go further than what everybody has today. Let's just put it that way.
The price of silver. A lot of people seem to think the price of silver should be over $1,000 per ounce. Would you agree? Would you disagree? What do you think?
I think what we know today and the technology we know today and the fact that it's the best conductor of energy that we know today, or electricity, quote unquote, there certainly seems to be a growing demand as opposed to the current supply that we take out of the ground every year. We've already had a deficit in the past 2 years. We're looking at another deficit probably now. And if people are banking on any kind of solar technology, I mean, silver goes into everything that we count on, whether it's your cell phone. I mean, any electronics that you use has silver as a conductor in it. So I think silver could explode for multiple reasons. If things in our financial system start to crack and break, or if the dollar is to collapse, throughout history, over at least the past 5,000 years, actually 6,000 years, we know that silver has been used as money. Silver has a dual purpose. It has an industrial purpose that is necessary for Tesla, other car makers, anything with chips in it, all of that. Plus, it's in medicines. I mean, almost everywhere you turn, there's something that's created with silver or a petroleum byproduct from oil. So at this point in time, with the technology we have and the needs that our world has, silver should go up. The price has been artificially suppressed. It's been noted by Paul Volcker himself back in the 70s after we came off the gold standard, that it's been manipulated. And if you look at the number of shares that trade on the COMEX and the paper shares at futures and options, there are years where they trade half the physical silver mined in a year in a day. And we know that that silver is not in existence on the COMEX. So the paper trading suppresses the price. Paul Volcker himself, chair of the Federal Reserve back in the 70s, said that to some extent the silver price was being manipulated, and the Hunt brothers came in and exploited it and showed the whole world. So I think silver, I'm hearing all the estimates from Wall Street, and they're showing an overall commodities growth for 2023 at 40%. So if you're saying Silver Eagle, I don't know whether they're 35, 40 bucks now. I think the premiums have come in a bit. So if it's $35 and it's going to go up 40%, it's up to $50 if it's allowed to float freely. If you get away from the COMEX, and the COMEX is no longer a viable exchange since it's losing so much of its material on a monthly basis, then the demand around the world is going to drive the price up even further. So it's very possible that you could have it spike to hit 100 at times. Maybe in the next year. $1,000, may not happen in 2023, but I can't say that it wouldn't happen in 2024, 25, or anywhere down the road, because it's certainly been suppressed, and its ratio to gold versus the ratio it comes out of the ground to gold is nowhere near its averages. So it does allow for some speculation in silver going forward.